All right, here we are back to page 293. We should be working on numbers 8, 9, and 10. You ready? Complete the table and describe the relationship between corresponding terms. Okay, so we're going to be doing the same thing, right? We got to look and see what the rule is. Remember, the first line is X and the second line is Y. We're going to label that. So if I put in 0 and get out 0, I'm most likely multiplying by 0 in that situation. Okay? Or maybe I'm multiplying by a different number, but I really need to look at another pair of numbers in order to find the relationship. So if I put in 1 and get out 2, it can't be multiplied by 0. How did I get from 1 to 2? I added 1 plus 1, but go back over here. If I did 0 plus 1, I wouldn't get 0, so it can't be that. How else can I get from 1 to 2? It times by 2. So I can see if that really works. 1 times 2 is 2. What about 0 times 2? 0 times 2 is 2 as well. So it does work. So the rule is take X and multiply by 2 and you'll get Y. Let's write that up above. The rule is X times 2 equals Y. Okay, so if we put in 3 and we follow the rule, so we times it by 2, what will we get out? 6. What about if we put in 4? We'll get out 8. And if we put in 7, we'll get out 14. So now we take a look at that and we decide to circle the corresponding pairs because that's what it asks to do. So we're going to circle in our red violet. We're going to circle where it says corresponding terms. And then we're going to go and circle all of the corresponding terms, the X's and Y's. And what is the relationship? Let's start with the top number. We'll say the top term is think of the 1 versus the 2, the 3 versus the 6. Isn't it half? The top term is half of the bottom term. Which makes sense in this situation. Think about that. Because if I have a bicycle, how many wheels does it have? Well, if I have 0 bicycles, it has 0 wheels. If I have 1 bicycle, it's going to have 2 wheels. What about 7 bicycles? How many wheels will there be? 14. So that's logical. The top term is 1/2 of the bottom term. Or you could say it this way. The bottom term is 2 times as great as the top term. Another logical way to explain this might be to say, for every bicycle, there are 2 wheels. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting thing to say. Maybe we're going to write that in the blue box. For every bicycle, I'm writing really small. There are 2 wheels. All right, let's move on. Number 9, cost of concert tickets. So we have the number of tickets we'll buy and the cost. Look, they don't even tell us how much one ticket is. I love that. Will you take your red violet and put boxes around all of the empty ones we have to find? We have to find out how much it costs to get 1 ticket, how much it costs to get 4 tickets, and how much it would cost to get 5 tickets. So how am I going to do that? Well, I have to use the information that they've given me. I'm going to use this corresponding pair, 2 and 70, and 3 and 105. So I'll say, if I bought 2 tickets and it cost me $70, how much was 1 ticket? How would I find that out? Well, I could do y divided by x to see what I would get. I think I would try to figure out how much 1 ticket is by doing 70 divided by 2. And 70 divided by 2, I'm just going to write it, Well, where should I write that? I'm going to write it over here. Is 35. So that means that each ticket was $35, right? That would make sense. If I have one ticket, two tickets, it would cost me 70 because 35 plus 35 is 70. So how much was one ticket? 35. Write it in the first box. And once I know that one ticket is 35, then I can easily find out how much 4 tickets and how much 5 tickets would be. And I'm going to have to do multiplication. I'm going to have to do the multiplication for that. So in this situation, I would come over maybe to the side, or I'm just going to maybe do it right here. Oh, let's not forget to label X and Y, where it says tickets and cost in dollars. The tickets is the X, and the cost in dollars is the Y. So we'll put an X by the tickets and a Y by the cost in dollars. Okay. Well, how much would 4 tickets be? I have to do 35 times 4. I'm just going to do that. Where should I put it? Because I want it to fit. I'm going to write really, really small right here. 35 times 4. See if you can get the math in there too. It's so small. Look, I'll zoom in. Okay, solve it. And then in my head, I'm just going to add 35 to that amount, because that's the pattern here, is it's going up by 35 every time. And that's easily done in your head. So once I found one of them, I didn't need to do the math for the other one. But you could do 35 times 5 to see if you get 175. You will, which was awesome. Okay, so it says the same thing. Circle, complete the table and describe the relationship between corresponding pairs. So what is the relationship? The bottom number is 35 times. As great as the top number. Could have said term, I guess it would have fit better, but that's okay. Or you could say the top number is 1/35 of the bottom number, but you could also just explain what's happening, right? You could say each ticket costs $35. Okay, weather relationships. We're saying inches of rain to inches of snow. So the 0 to 0 doesn't really help you know a whole lot. What does help you know is that if you look at 2 other corresponding pairs. So I would begin by looking at the first 2 they've actually given you after the zeros. And then look, we're going to have to figure out some empty things too. So we need to find the rule, and we need to find the 2 empty boxes. So 0 to 0, I can't quite tell what that is yet. So I look at the next numbers, and I see 0.5 to 5. What is the relationship between 0.5 to 5? So right now the decimal's in front of the 5, and in this situation, the decimal would be behind the 5. So it's all about moving the decimal 1 time. Right, so I'm just going to show that. I moved the decimal 1 time. What happens when you move the decimal 1 time? You multiplied it by 10 to the first power, right? When you multiply by 10 to the first power, it moves the decimal 1 time. So what is 10 to the first power? It's just 10. So it's x times 10 equals y. If you want to say it as x times 10 to the first, you could, but 10 to the first is just 10. So that's the rule. Let's label x and y. The rain is x, the snow is y. And now that we know the rule, let's go ahead and solve. If there's 1.5 inches of rain, and I'm supposed to multiply that by 10 or just move the decimal, then it would be 15. What about on 2? If you move the decimal once on 2, it becomes 20. Or if you just say, well, plug in 2 for x. 2 times 10 is 20. So I've completed the table, and now I describe the relationships. Let's begin by just explaining what's going on, right? We'll say for every inch of rain, there's 10 inches of snow. It's pretty interesting. Or we could do the top number, bottom number thing. Should we try that? Let's try that. The top term is think about it. If you're like, I don't know when it comes to decimals, then look at a really easy one, like the 1 over 10. What's the relationship between 1 and 10? Well, you had to multiply by 10, which means the bottom number is 10 times greater, and the top number is 1/10 the size of that. So the top term is 1/10 of the bottom term. Is that true about this one? Is 2 1/10 of 20? Or how did I get from 2 to 20? I times by 10. Yeah. So I'm just going to also say it. The bottom term is, what's the opposite of having a 10th? It's being 10 times greater. Mine says the bottom term is 10 times greater than the top term. What is the rule on number 10? It's x times 10 equals y. That's the rule. Okay, we are going to do our best to get this cut out. Watch what I would like you to do. I want you to cut pretty skinny on the left and right, but get the problem that says real world patterns, keep the title. You don't need to keep the section that says your name, which we didn't really keep the name. We didn't write our name anyway, but keep the title that says real world patterns, and then cut it really skinny on the sides. We are going to try and get this in our journal. Cut off any excess on the bottom that you don't need. We're going to try and get this in our journal to fit on the very next page. And I know that in our journal, we ended on the back side like this with the holes on the right. So we are actually going to be flipping our journal and putting the holes back on the left and trying to get this glued in. It should fit just fine. And I'm just going to center it and get it taped in. So we have learned how to look at real world situations and real world patterns. But we really want to make sure that we understand the things we learned today, okay? So we're gonna, instead of putting this actually in the center, I'm gonna move it close to the holes on the left. That way I can write something on the side for us to remember. So go ahead and get that glued in. Push pause on the video if you need to, if it takes you longer than what it takes me. But we are gonna take a look, or we're just gonna quickly write the things that we should have learned today, because it feels pretty simple, but at the same time, it's really, really important. So let's go ahead and start writing. You need to push pause if you're not ready. So we're going to say number patterns and relationships are important to recognize. Okay, that's first so important for you to remember. Number patterns and relationships are important to recognize. Like, you need to be able to do that. I'm going to use my red violet to outline the cloud. And then I'm going to make a couple bullet points, and then we're done. So the bullet points I'm going to make are going to say something about what we learned or what you need to be able to do with that information. Okay? So you're going to find the pattern. Or the rule. You're going to have to be able to fill in missing numbers. We'll say fill in missing terms. I think that might be good. You're going to need to be able to circle corresponding pairs. You need to know what that means. And lastly, the thing we've been doing a lot of is describe the relationships. Between the pairs. Those are all the things you need to know how to do after today's lesson. You need to be able to find the pattern or the rule, fill in missing terms, circle corresponding pairs, and then describe the relationships between the pairs. Those are the things you need to know how to do. Now, as you're looking at your homework and remembering, you can pull that out. You are going to want to keep your journal handy because it will help you so much with how to do numbers 1 and 2. Really look at the pages we did in our journal if you're confused. It walks you through it step by step. Okay? So you would know how to do that. Numbers 3 and 4, you're going to have to use this in and out function table. Remember, the top number will be X and the bottom number will be Y. So the number of songs is X and cost in dollars is Y. You'll have to describe a relationship, and then you'll have to find out an additional part of the information. So you have to do all on the homework side. On remembering, you've got this. When someone says in a story problem on number 1, when they say they are cutting into, that means division, friends. Make sure that on your remembering number 1, you did some division. And then on number 2, this girl is running a race. How many times as long as? So it seems like you would be doing multiplication, but to find out the answer to that, you're going to have to do division on number 2. Number 3, you're going to have to put an equation, and you're going to have to make an estimate. And then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you're going to plug it in. The lesson you just learned about solving for variables. That's really easy on number 10 for stretch thinking, but I'm not going to make you do it. Thanks for hanging in there, and we'll catch you next time.